Hello Kavya, how are you?
Hi Anushka, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How's the day going?
The day's been going fine,
Yeah,
packed with work.
same
Yeah,
here. I think everybody is, packed with work all around.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, then let's start. We'll begin with a little of your background.
Right. So, as you know, my name is Kavya Mukhija. I'm 25 years old and I'm a disability rights advocate. I was born with a rare genetic condition called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. I know it is a bit of a tongue twister, so I'll break it down for you. So it basically means that my muscles are weak and I have joint contractures all over my body,
Yeah.
which affects my mobility, and I use a powered wheelchair to move around.
Okay. And you were involved with NCPDB fellowship. What did you work in? What area did you work in that?
Right. So as an NCPDP Javed Abidi fellow, I worked on accessible tourism in the city of Jaipur
Okay.
because so my area was accessibility. I started off with accessibility driven by my personal experiences. Then, considering the fact that I was in Jaipur and Jaipur is a tourist city, I narrowed it down to accessible tourism and studied tourist places in Jaipur, um, understood their accessibility, and also interviewed people with disabilities to understand their perspective and what are the barriers that they generally face in accessing leisure and tourism services.
Nice. How was your experience when you went to the field? Which people did you meet, and how was their, response? How did they, because accessibility is less talked about in our country, and when for
Right.
generations there have been no change, and suddenly a person comes up and says that this needs to be changed. Of course, there must be very diverse reactions to that. So, what did you experience when you went to the field?
Right. So, I met with a lot of people with disabilities, both virtually and physically. I would say it was largely virtual because the fellowship began right after COVID,
Okay.
and we were still coming across with the lockdown and the other measures that were there. So, but the perspective was that there was a lack of general awareness around accessibility and such things. I did a study of almost 110 people with disabilities all across the country and 11 business owners in Jaipur. And most of them were not aware of what the Rights of Persons with Disabilities
Yeah.
Act is. And, and of course, most of them were not even visited by people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Similarly, for people with disabilities, there almost 10% of the people I surveyed could not go out to um, into the public spaces. Like they never went out, they always stayed at home. And that was largely because of the barriers that it existed in their vicinity.
Yeah.
Now, here I would like to talk about an experience of there is a restaurant chain pretty prominent in Jaipur,
Yeah.
and we had just moved into the city at that time, and it was this restaurant was getting constructed. Now, um, we happened to visit it. My mother happened to visit that place, and because she also hails from the disability rights background, and she's been working in the sector for quite a long time. So she went there and she spoke to the manager and she asked them, why do you not have a ramp here? And their response was quite saddening because they said that why do we need a ramp? This is not a hospital that people with disabilities are going to visit us. So the general idea, the general perception was that people with disabilities or wheelchair users, as it is largely understood, that they reside or they live only in hospitals.
Yeah.
Um, so that is the general thinking. So working around this, of course, was challenging because you're targeting um, very staunch beliefs and beliefs that have been there since the beginning.
Yeah. So apart, along with this incident, I know one of yours incident, one more, when you went to Birla Mandir and the
Mm.
guards there said that the wheelchair is not allowed and you can't go in because that would damage the floor. Does that show that we lack empathy towards others, or we are not, open to understand the conditions of specifically disabled people? We feel that most of the people are, abled, and we don't need to cater to such a small population. Do you think
Right.
like that? I mean, the people have this perception.
Um, so I would say, Anushka, there are a lot of things that play around for
Yeah.
such a mentality to, come up. Um, so, what really happens is, if I were to talk about that incident specifically, so like you rightly mentioned, I was there at Birla Temple, right outside the main hall of the temple, and they told me that my wheelchair could not go inside. So what they understood was that wheelchair is impure and it would damage the floor. Okay, and they equated it to people's footwear that we usually take out before stepping into the temple or
Yeah.
um, religious places. So, I mean, of course, there is a lack of empathy, certainly, and also I would say there's a lack of awareness and a lot of ignorance.
Yeah.
Because I won't say that the guards who were there, they were at fault because they were simply following orders, right? People who were at fault was the management who actually came up with such a clause or whoever did for that matter. Okay, and um, people may think that you know um, people with disabilities are a small population or they do not visit us regularly, so we don't need to be accessible. But it is the flip side actually.
Yeah.
It is the fact that people with disabilities do not visit because the place is not accessible.
That's true.
Not the fact that we are less in number or we don't like to travel or
That's
any other reason.
Yeah.
You know, simply just think about it. Why would you like to go somewhere where you are constantly um, indignified, disrespected, and made to feel excluded?
That's true.
Why would you like to indulge
Nobody
in
would
such an
want to,
activity?
visit.
Absolutely. So, this is the idea, and people with disabilities are more than 1 billion. 1.3 billion is the number of people with disabilities. Indian census, the Census of India 2021, says that we are 2.21% of the Indian population, which
That's
is
very large.
2.6 crore.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, if we're, and this was 2011 data, I'm sure the data would have increased by now.
By now, yeah.
And if we were to, match it with the global trends, there would be at least 15 to 16% of the Indian population that would be disabled.
Yeah.
And if we talk about universal accessibility and the consumers of accessibility, so to say, we will also be including people with temporary disabilities, people, pregnant women or women with
Elderly.
young children, elderly people. So that would
Yeah.
make more than 50% of the Indian population,
That's true.
right? And I mean, accessibility benefits everyone, disabled or non-disabled. So our lenses have to widen. The
Yeah,
way
that's
we
true.
see disability and the way we see accessibility, that has to widen.
Yeah,
The approach
accessibility.
that,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, exactly. The approach that, accessibility would only benefit so and so people, that is definitely incorrect.
Hmm. Yeah, accessibility is needed by a pregnant woman and elderly, likewise as disabled people. And you never know, when you encounter an accident or when, fate plays its game and it happens. So it's better to be, empathizing to others rather than just thinking about yourself.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I have heard about one of your experiences when your relatives used to say to parents, then don't teach this girl, she would not be able to do anything. Kya fayda hai ise padha kar. They, they didn't, they, I think, lived in denial, not accepted that the fact that you have to use wheelchair. How does that make you feel? How did that make you feel?
So I would give you a bit background what this was really about. So this was when my parents were looking for a school for me to send, for me to send me to. Now, and this is I'm talking about the early 2000s. Um, as you might be aware, of course, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act was not there.
Yeah.
We did have the rights of the Persons with Disabilities Act, but that was also not well implemented because it had just come in.
Yeah.
And so, of course, there was no awareness, nothing about it. Now, my relatives were of the opinion that it was no good to send me to a school because I had no future and it would be a waste of time, energy, efforts, everything.
Yeah.
And if we look at this situation, it stems from the medical model of disability, which focuses on, the impairment and also the fact that I mean, there's a lot of ableism ingrained in this, and it's not just them. It's just so it's the collective conditioning,
That's
and
true.
that is why the and I would also like to highlight here that when there's a child with a disability that is born, because we never wish that
That.
something like that would happen,
Yeah.
right? हम कभी
True.
सोचते नहीं है कि हाँ हो सकता है मेरा बच्चा disabled हो. So when that really happens, it is definitely a shocker for the parents, the family, and everyone. So the first reaction is denial for sure. Okay. And and again, this is like the collective conditioning that has affected them. And क्योंकि वो denial होता है, they're constantly looking for a solution. Like there's a theory in psychology that's called the cognitive dissonance theory.
Yeah.
So our mind constantly tries to draw a balance between our actions and our thoughts.
That's true.
So if either of them are not in, if they are incongruent, our mind will actually either change the thought or will change the behavior,
Actions. Yeah.
right? So this is so that is what happens. So that is why there's a lot of emphasis on finding a solution or finding a cure.
Yeah.
Okay. And hence, going to temples and things like those that come into picture. But again, um, yeah, so this was also there with me and especially in the initial years. Okay. And then our thinking gradually shifted to the social model of disability that um, the that disability is actually caused by the barriers in society
Society.
and not by the impairment itself.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So after this thinking, when your parents sent you to school and whole your school life, your mother had help you navigate the school, and you couldn't go to library or you had to miss your practical classes. Then when at the end of your school life, at the last year, when your pol science teacher came and she installed the ramp for you and she told you that enjoy this year to the fullest, I'm sure it must have been a great feeling, because navigating all those 11 years in the school life with the help of your mother, and it must have been so difficult for her as well as for you. And then a teacher comes and says, I will do that, and she does it must have been feel great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned, my mother had to be there throughout. in school while I attended to make sure that I did not miss any of the classes. Now, so when my teacher, when my political science teacher actually um, gave me this idea, I was like, is that even allowed? Like, I mean, because all these years you've been like, so you sort of internalize the feeling that your classroom has to be on the ground floor. It cannot be on the upper floors
Yeah.
because that is the most convenient. But if there is a way for me to go to any floor, then I can, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that then the freedom is with me. So this is what she helped me understand that um, I could access the other classrooms as well. And so one day she just happened to come to me and she told me that the school is sort of installing there's a lift that is being made in the school and that and requested the principal to move your class to the first floor now because it's the last year and you should also have some fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that is going to be fun. It's a very in the middle kind of a feeling, like being feeling seen and validated and you know your
Recognized.
access needs are taken into
Yeah.
consideration, yes, recognized as well. So yeah.
That must have felt great, I'm sure. And that's so big of a thought on the part of your pol science teacher, especially when it was not her work, it was the administration's work, and she told you, and that must have felt so great. Did you enjoy your last year then?
I did. I did. So in a very funny, in a very light incident. So, um, so since the lift was there, and I was not using a power chair at that period of time, um, you know, one of my friends would be permitted to accompany me to the lift, because it
Okay.
was not open for the general, for the non-disabled students.
Yeah.
So there would be a fight over who is going to accompany me and who's going to be there. So yeah, it was fun.
Kavya, when you went to field work, you must have met many people to jot down their case studies and must have met many government service servants. How was the experience like? How did they respond? What did you perceive from their response?
Right. So I collected case studies mostly virtually. So these were over Zoom calls, phone calls, or written essays. Um, so one of the people that I met, she is a person with a disability and an HR professional who lives here in Jaipur. And she commutes to work every day. And while doing that, she uses the cab. Now she shared an experience while using these services and said that, most of the times when she booked a cab and the driver got to know that there's a wheelchair that needs to be put in the car, they cancelled the ride. Or, there were times when the drivers would not allow her to put the wheelchair in the car because they felt that it would dirty the seat covers,
Yeah.
right? Um, so this was one of the experiences. Then the other experiences was of a girl um, who also had a locomotor disability, and she could not take her exams because her school was not accessible, and
Okay.
the school did not provide a medium for her to give her exams. Another case study that I documented was on disability and mental health. So there's a photographer who travels a lot, and he hails from one of the districts of Rajasthan and lives with a locomotor disability as well. And he sort of drew a perspective on disability and mental health and how travel, despite being a person with a disability, helps him to sort of maintain a balance um, in his mental health, physical health, emotional well-being, and a lot of other things. And it is heartening to see that the diversity of case studies that I could gather, they all reflected different areas of intersections between disability and other fields. For example, this case study that I'm talking about, disability and mental health, then disability and inaccessibility. Some case studies also pointed out to family support and, not having the resources to actually be able to access um, wheelchairs or assistive devices or other things. So if we look at disability as a collective, we'll see that it cuts across almost all of the areas. So it's just not accessibility or education or employment. It's also leisure and entertainment and fun
Hobbies.
and creativity and movies and
Yeah,
so many other
so many
things.
things.
And when I met with the disability commissioner here in Jaipur, he was, of course, intrigued by my work and he did appreciate that I'd done a good job. And he also um, said he was also intrigued when I pointed out that the ramp at his office was also not made in the right way. So I pointed that out to him and he he did not know what was the actual standards.
Standards.
Now, this is not to point out that he was wrong somewhere, definitely not,
Hmm.
but to sort of highlight the fact that there is a lack of awareness even among officials.
Yeah, that's true.
So I helped him understand what the correct ratios are and how ramps are supposed to be built, right? For example, the ratio has to be 1 is to 12, which is 1 unit of height versus 12 units of length. So if it is 1 centimeter high, the step is 1 centimeter high, the ramp has to be 12 centimeters long.
Okay.
And the surface has to be skid free, it should be non-reflective, it should not have any barriers, there should be railings. So a lot of other things. And I just pointed that out to him. This is what it is. There is a dire need for awareness at all levels.
So when it's frustrating, who do you think are your support system? What is your support system at that point?
So I think there is a lot of support system. There are a lot of support systems, and especially when you're a person with a disability, there are support systems by default.
Yeah.
So firstly, of course, it is my family because they have been there throughout the beginning. And they have been, I mean, they've supported me in everything literally that I did and have done. So, firstly, them. Secondly, I would say my co-fellows because they were also in a similar situation and they sort of understood, you know, um, where how we were supposed to do it or what kind of challenges we were facing.
Yeah.
So it was always like consulting each other and communicating, speaking to each other and finding that space to discuss your issues and sort of come up with solutions together. And um, these things were definitely there. And when you are addressing an issue like disability, which is a global issue, then you need to come together to find solutions as well. Because as a person, you can't do it alone. So together we fellows also did a lot of workshops and trainings and online sessions, wherein we talked about each of our themes and also um, used that collective effort to generate greater awareness.
Yeah.
So that was also there. And I think other than that, it is just the disability community that is, very supportive of one's endeavors and who just is there for support whenever. So, yeah.
Yeah. You talked about global issue, and you have represented India in Global Disability Summit 2022. That was a very big opportunity, and that was a very big stage for you to represent India. First of all, congratulations to you. You represented
Thank you.
India at such a big stage. How was that experience like? How did that feel like?
Of course, it was a moment of pride, definitely, because I got to be there with so many global leaders and leaders who were doing remarkable work in their respective fields.
Yeah,
So definitely. Plus, I also got the opportunity to put forth the challenges that people with disabilities in India face
that's true.
at the global front. So I think that is a very important point because so many people, I mean, most of the people with disabilities are not able to voice out their experiences and challenges and opinions. And there are again a lot of reasons for that. So it was sort of a huge responsibility on my shoulders um, to share the challenges that we people with disabilities in India face at the global front. And because that was important because um, it is through our challenges that policies and international frameworks and everything would come
Change.
into place.
Yeah.
So yes, that was definitely a moment of pride and a lot of responsibility.
That's true. I mean, it is such a big opportunity and such good. You must have felt your family would have feel very proud on you when you got that opportunity. That must have felt very nice.
True, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So you talked about your fellows. I would like to ask, how was your bonding with them? I know you used to work together, and like you said, you used to discuss issues and problems together. Apart from that, what were
Mm.
some backstage moments or instances that you enjoyed?
So it's like, when you're working together, you develop friendships, and I think that is there at every workplace. So that is also the same thing here at the fellowship as well. So although we met professionally, but the bonds, I mean, they have continued even after many of us are not there in the fellowship any longer. I mean, it's like being there for each other, um, despite everything or, despite any restrictions. So it's like finding friendships and, you know, it's just not working together. It's like, you know,
Being there for
you
each
just,
other.
yeah, truly being there for each other. Yeah.
So, any moments of fun that you would share with us?
Yeah, so since we fellows are from different parts of the country, we really got the time to be together during the in-person trainings that we had at the fellowship. So that would be like a week long, um, week full of activities and
Yeah,
workshops, and that was the only time we got to be together. So, and so that was the time, after the workshop has ended, we would stay back and, just sit with each other, crack jokes, discuss stuff, go to each other's rooms and, sit together, brainstorm things, brainstorm solutions, and, share our challenges with each other. So I think there was a lot of bonding that happened in those in-person
same.
workshops And they were also important, I would say, because we were at the end of the day working together. And if we did not know each other that well, we would not be able to sort of work and work towards a goal or bring out any change. So I'm grateful to NCPDP for organizing such a workshop and these workshops because it really helped us develop our bonds and networking relationships.
Yeah. If I'm not wrong, this was your first advocacy based research, right?
Yes.
So, what were some moments that truly felt, enjoying, that you enjoyed the most, or something that, truly interested you, or some challenges that you faced in research?
So research particularly was not challenging. I really enjoy research and it
Okay.
is one of my key areas of interest. So it was not challenging per se. Of course, there was a lot that I learned as well. And one thing that struck me was the fact that um, so I chose this topic particularly driven by my personal experiences
G.
um, because as a person with disability and a locomotor disability who likes to travel and who also experiences inaccessibility and other challenges, this was sort of interesting to see that it was just not me who liked to travel. There were also other people with disabilities
Yeah,
who loved to travel, but they could not,
that's true.
you know. And it was also again interesting to see that even for travel, for something as basic as travel, there were a lot of, uh, a lot of challenges or a lot of layers of challenges that existed for people with disabilities.
That's
So it
true.
was just not accessibility of the place that we are traveling to, but it is also accessibility of our own house. Because if our own house is not accessible, we would not be able to travel every day or frequently, or maybe not at all.
That's true.
Okay. Then another factor that came into the forefront was family support. Because people with disabilities, are we rely on support from people, and that is largely provided by our families.
Yeah,
So unless and until they are supportive of our endeavors, we can't undertake um, activities or travel or anything, so to say, right? And another important aspect that came up was the purchasing power of people with disabilities. Now, it is not the fact that we cannot purchase services or we cannot consume services, but it is the fact that they are not accessible.
able to us.
So there were people who were even ready to pay a higher price to get accessible services like accessible hotels or accessible cabs or so on and so forth.
Yeah,
And if you look at it, people with disabilities always travel with someone. So it's like we're traveling in groups of twos, threes, fours, or more
so
people.
on. Yeah,
So it's profitable as well. But we've not really tapped into this
market.
uh, consumer pool as of now.
That's kind of like why people have not tapped, because instead of one, they are receiving many. Kavya, it has been a very intense journey of yours from school to college and then working here and making tourism accessible and being a young age advocate. Can you tell me what goes inside the hindsight or back of the mind of a young age advocate who's working for accessible tourism, and when things are not working out, when you know what you want, you know what you want to implement, but due to others or due to barriers from others, you are not able to achieve that. What goes in the back of your mind at that time?
So what goes, I think there are a lot of things that go into my mind. Some things like, you know, why is it not working out? What is it that I am doing wrong that, um, that is sort of playing out as a barrier in my work? Or, again, maybe that it is not worth working on
Yeah,
because कुछ हो ही नहीं रहा है, like I'm trying to do things but it's not working out, and so I mean there's a lot of self-doubt that goes in. There's a lot of doubt of your own work that goes in. That maybe there's something that I have done wrong. Maybe I'm
yeah,
not following the right steps or approaching the right people. But it is also important to see that it is not we who have to bring change. Like, of course, we can start the chain, we can start the work, but ultimately, um, it is the people on ground who have to work and who have to implement sort of those changes.
that's
So
true.
it's not in our hands. We can we can tell them that this has to be done, or this is how this can be done, but in the end it is on them how they do it or whether or not they
They
do
do it
it
on.
at all.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. We can just recommend things. Implementation is in their hands.
True, I mean we can take different routes. Definitely we can do from self advocacy to legal action, but in the end, whether or not it works out in our favor or not, that is not in our hand.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Kavya, it has been a very long journey of yours. Thank you, Kavya. Ji, that's all from us. We loved talking to you. Actually, you gave us so many insights about what disabled people want. Like, for instance, if I ask somebody what disabled people want, they'll say employment, food, education, right? Or basically accessibility. But you told me that told us basically that there is a world beyond that also. There are luxuries that they want, there are hobbies that they want, you know creativity, or basically goals that they want to pursue. Yeah, it's not just employment and basic things. Thank you so much for interacting with us and giving us such a valuable information.
Thank you, Anushka. I really had a great time. And thank you so much for getting and speaking to me. Thank you.
Thank you.